Hey, John, what's going on?
I can't wait to talk to today's guest.
Yeah, I'm really excited to introduce you to Dawa. This is a really good friend of mine. We go back pretty far, and he's actually a Buddhist Lama as well. And he's
So I'm
also a
outnumbered. I'm already outnumbered right now.
yes, and he's
Great.
a
Okay.
chiropractor
Oh,
as
nice.
well. He's a writer. He's working on a movie about the history of the health food industry, which is fascinating. It's a huge industry. He's been in there since the beginning, and he's traveled all over the world. And we're definitely going to talk about this. He did a 3-year, 3-month, 3-day retreat, meaning no contact with the outside world for 3 years straight. But he's done many other retreats in addition to that. And so he probably has about 100,000 hours of meditation, if I had to guess. So we're talking to a real seasoned meditator here. And yeah, so I'm excited to dive in. So yeah, so Dawa, if you had, all the money you needed, you had all the obstacles out of the way, what would be your blissful life you'd be living?
I'd probably be in a cave somewhere. And I only say that half jokingly because that is my bliss. When I'm in retreats, which for the audience, that means a solo retreat, doesn't mean a group retreat or anything like that. It's pretty traditional style. Uh, I feel like I'm in my element and where I'm actually sort of supposed to be in terms of my life and particularly this stage of my life. Um, but yeah, I would do many things. Life is so full and interesting and fascinating, and traveling is wonderful and exploring other cultures. And oh gosh, there's a million things. So, fortunately, I don't have that problem of having so much money that I don't know what to do with it.
But you'd imagine yourself like meditating a lot and travel. Where would you like to travel, for example?
Well, there's some countries in Asia I haven't explored yet, haven't had the opportunity. I've spent a lot of time in India and Nepal, and actually in the last few years in China, mainly Western China, um, and Thailand and places like that. But I've not gotten to Korea or Japan, it's a huge world. There's lots to explore. I'm a very curious person, and I find the world fascinating and interesting, and um, that kind of thing. And, travel, we learn so much about ourselves as well as other cultures through the experience. Um, it's an interesting hypothetical question. But yes, I like to spend my time in meditation, which I do as a daily thing for several hours, but that isn't even close to the same thing as being in a retreat setting, which I try to do whenever my life sort of allows that, which could be sometimes it's only once every few years. Right now, I'm in a place where I feel I'm kind of overdue for another nice retreat, something substantial. But every time I do that, Jason, um, I find new things happen. New insights or understandings. Things just deepen, and that's what my journey is about, basically. I have many interests in the world as well, as a writer and working on different projects. But in some sense, those are peripheral and supportive of my main thing.
Nice. Okay. Great answer. So I know you're gonna have a hard time with this question, but what's your strategy? What advice would you give others to be blissful?
Well, I'm not one to give advice particularly, but it's a great question. I guess anything to say is first follow your own heart, follow your bliss, but be honest with yourself and honest with others as just a foundational premise. And keep striving to be the best version of yourself you can be. Nothing particularly profound or unusual there, I think.
I think that's
Nice.
all really good, though. I think that's all excellent. So I like to shift things up here with my question. So, can you remember back to the first time you ever felt different or disconnected from everyone else?
Oh, wow, man. That's a really good question. Yes. I mean, it goes way back. The very first time, no, I can't pinpoint anything, but there's always kind of almost always been that sense of, I hate to say not fitting in, but it's probably as close as I can get to it. Uh, a sense of maybe I don't relate so well to this culture that I was born into, or even my family of origin that I was born into. And okay, I'm sort of on my own to figure this out, whatever this is, this journey and so on. So I found refuge early on in books, particularly science fiction, but other things too. And when I found a kindred spirit like Henry David Thoreau at a young age, that was really important to me. Like, oh, I'm not alone. And the other place I found refuge was nature. So I was fortunate. I grew up in Maryland, and back in those days, there was still lots of woods and creeks and streams, and I would go out all the time, and be in nature, looking for turtles, looking for snakes, looking, just hanging out in those kinds of environments. Um, so that was mainly it. Later on, I found a passion for soccer. So, physically just being more active. And I was always a runner and kind of had an ability there. So those are my main things. But yeah, people like Henry David Thoreau was one of my early influences. And then, and like I said, nature. And then it evolved into the quest, just again, being a reader and a lover of books. It's just all logically, and also feeling disconnected, as your question was, from mainstream. I was like, okay, there's got to be answers and solutions, or ways that I can make an understanding of this strange thing that we call our life. And that led me on the spiritual quest and investigating world religions and stuff like that.
So, which science fiction author or maybe science fiction book comes to mind?
Wow.
For
Well,
you.
I got into the whole fantasy genre, particularly early on. My influence was Edgar Rice Burroughs. He was creator of Tarzan, but a whole lot of other books set in different worlds and stuff like that. That was really important. Ray Bradbury, phenomenal. Just what a great storyteller, and just transport you to all kinds of ways of thinking and looking at the world, and little interesting twists and turns and stuff like that. All that stuff. There were so many. I had an enormous science fiction collection. Regrettably, I no longer have that, but there were many authors, many great books. Almost too many to mention.
Wow, that's great. I think we have that in common. So my second question is, can you remember a time when you made others uncomfortable by challenging the status quo?
That's a very interesting question. I think I made people uncomfortable inadvertently just by being who I am. And look, there's a lot of things that factor into who we are. And now I can mention the A word, which is astrology. So as an Aries, I tend to have been a, what do they call it? A bull in a china shop. So, that also led me to some painful self-awareness, to be honest, and led me to realize I need to master, or at least really get into meditation as a way to work with my impatience. So that's different perhaps than, your question was geared, I think, a little bit more towards, you said questioning the status quo.
I think that totally fits it, because it's inadvertent. I think you're smart, and you picked up on kind of what the question's really asking is I'm not saying you intentionally did that, but and as an effect, you made people uncomfortable, which is not what you tend to do. and really what you're doing is you're doing it by, challenging their status quo for them. And again, you got it back to uniqueness. So I think you nailed that question perfectly.
Okay.
I'm going
Well,
to ask another question to follow up on it.
sure.
So after Jason asked too, but yeah, you're sharp. You're very sharp. You pick it up on all this really quick. So
Tell
Awesome,
me.
man. So you kind of were touching on it earlier, but starting from like waking up to going to bed, like what would be your perfect day? Like walk through the day.
Well, it kind of harkens back to your previous question, Jason. If my perfect day would be, I'd be in retreat. I'd be waking up at, I don't set an alarm clock ever, but, probably somewhere, well, certainly well before sunrise. So maybe 4 or 5 in the morning. And I would be doing 4 sessions of meditation practices, several hours each session. That's a perfect day for me, to be honest. It may be hard for other people to wrap their head around that or relate to it, but that's my honest answer for me. My perfect day is I can really do what's meaningful to me and feel like I'm really working on my my journey and not being particularly distracted or sort of seduced by the affairs of the world, be it political or anything else. So my perfect day is like unplugged from the world kind of thing. There's many things that can make a day perfect. Just helping somebody else in some way. Again, inadvertently or advertently. But that's always a real joy too. So I don't need entertainment. I don't really look for entertainment, so to speak. Yeah, I guess that's my answer.
Can you go into a little bit more detail of a day in retreat? So you mentioned four sessions. Like, so you wake up at 4:30, 5 o'clock. You go. Do you walk a little bit? Do you have some tea? What does the day look like?
Yeah, well, I mean, the particulars of the beginning, after using the bathroom and so on, and yeah, a cup of tea is really nice. I like a good cup of Darjeeling tea, is wonderful. Maybe with just a little bit of honey and some oat milk. So if we want to be specific, but that first session is it can vary over the years, but basically something like this: a couple hours, 2.5 hours maybe of a morning session, focused mostly on different kinds of prayers and things, aspirations, and certain things like that. Really moving towards altruistic spirit, and then maybe a breakfast, a little breakfast, and probably a little, maybe even go back to sleep for half an hour and take a short little power nap, and then get up and do my second session, which could be, just depends, could be like 9 o'clock to maybe noon or something like that. That would be one of my bigger second session. I'm a little more the energy is rising, so to speak, because it's morning and you're very clear headed and stuff like that. So have a nice long session, and then lunch break, and again, just some rest or maybe a little reading or something like that. And then a third session, also a very long session, maybe even 3 hours or more. And then a little break for dinner and that kind of thing. And then I do it. Maybe I'm getting a little mentally and physically fatigued later. It's getting later in the day. And so maybe a little bit shorter session, hour and a half or something. And then try to go to bed, reasonably early, like 9 or 10 o'clock, something like that. What I practice and what I work on, that changes year by year, kind of, but I go in with an intention to focus on specific things. It could be, well, I just do certain things, different practices in my sort of journey in Tibetan Buddhism. So I could be working on specific practices, certain deities and things, or certain kinds of meditation approaches. I mean, I do something called Mahamudra, which I know, Jason, you're quite familiar with, but the people watching this would have no idea probably what I'm talking about, which is fine.
Give
But
a little description, like a little.
basically, in a nutshell, it's the nature of mind, and you could also say by extension the nature of overall reality, and also you could say the working with non-dual awareness, which sounds presumptuous, I know, but that's what we're doing.
In the model, John, this is like the 3-4. But anyway, yeah. So awesome. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. That's a lot of really good stuff, man. People have never even heard of that kind of a day.
Yeah, well, it's something after, several decades, 30, 40 years, that's where I'm at. There's different styles and approaches to doing retreats and stuff, but this is how I was kind of trained and taught and what works for me.
Awesome. So if you could have one wish to change something in your life, to improve something in your life instantly, what would you wish for?
Well, my first thought when you started to phrase the question was world peace, of course. But you're asking about me specifically, which I guess maybe it'd be a little more money so that I could not have that in the background of my mind as a little stressor.
So you could do retreat and then not have to worry about money and then come out of retreat, travel. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very mundane wish, very, very ordinary, but that would be an honest answer for sure.
Awesome.
Nice. So back to when you were being a bull in a china shop and challenging status quo, what compelled you to do what you were doing? What compelled you to challenge the status quo?
Well, I never had an agenda to challenge the status quo. So maybe we can clarify that for a moment. I'm just trying to, again, figure out my own suffering, my own insecurities, my own stress and anxiety. Had nothing to do with the outer world particularly. So I don't know if you want to reframe the question, John, or
no, that makes sense because again, there's a lot of ways that can go. And what I'm hearing you say, and you correct me if I'm not hearing this right, is you're trying to figure out your own, uniqueness, your path, your stress, your issues, and the effect of that is I'm really talking causal. Like what's the cause in you that everybody saw this on the outside? So your cause was internal, thinking about you. You're not thinking about challenging anything out here. You're thinking about something in here. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, I was painfully aware that I didn't, like I say, either sort of fit in or share a lot of the mainstream values of the culture I was raised in and embedded in. So now, again, I'm of that generation of that became hippies and stuff like that, and so there was a fair amount of kindred spirits that were also stepping out of mainstream society. That at its core was the essence of the hippie, in quotes, the hippie sort of movement. And I was very much kind of an outgrowth of that. So there were many people that were moving to the country. We said it was called the Back to the Land movement. I had cousins that did that, and I joined them in West Virginia in a very, very rural type setting. And there were other people, young people doing similar things. So we were building our own homes, raising our kids, growing food, and just exploring sort of these alternative, quote unquote, lifestyles and stuff like that. I also found community in the Grateful Dead. And that was not something nothing was forced. I wasn't like trying to join a group or anything. And that there's no group there with the Grateful Dead. It was just something that was very spoke to me on a very deep level musically. And also there was kind of a spiritual element to that. So many people reduce it to, it was just music and it was a party. And there was that. But for many of us, there was something more profound than that. So there's a variety of things. Again, I've had this just one man's life, very different than, again, how most people living a normal life would live. Yeah, ask again something so I can say more about that.
I will, but it sounds like the community. I mean, the thing is that you say people live a normal life. The thing is I think a lot of people have these thoughts and these feelings, and maybe they don't act on them, and then they wish they did. And I think that's what's so valuable about these interviews, is helping other people hear this and maybe not feel so disconnected. Someone else went through it. So how much of that was community, or what does community mean to you? Because it sounds like that's also part of this, the Grateful Dead thing, is there were other people involved in that, and that is a spiritual component when you got this connection with other people.
Yeah, I mean, shared realities or shared viewpoints or paradigms is it's meaningful, and it's comforting too on some level. Again, that notion that we're not alone. So, like this thing about ordinary or normal. What is normal life? I think the message is there's no one size fits all. That we're all unique, and we need to honor our own individuality and our own journeys. And it's not for someone else to judge us, and it's not for us to judge somebody else. That's a really important ethic for me. Live and let live, just respect everybody's ability to do their own thing, make their own mistakes, figure out their own truths. As long as you're not hurting somebody, I think that's important.
I completely agree. And so my last official question, I'm sure I got a bunch of other questions, but my last official question is you took refuge in books and everything when you knew you were different, than your family, and different, all of that. What would you say, if you're looking back at that, what would you say was your mission in life at that point in your life?
To solve the question of who am I and why do I suffer? Suffering's a
Wow.
funny word. It's a terrible word, actually, and it's the word we're sort of saddled with from most of the Buddhist school translations. But it's a horrible word. But one's own just sense of oneself and the cumbersomeness of being oneself, is itself the problem. That like why do I get in the way of complete happiness, or being totally graceful, or whatever? And so just self-awareness, and that does translate so well into I think hopefully most spiritual paths, particularly Buddhism. It's about mindfulness and self-awareness and so on. So it can be painful to be really honest with oneself and see oneself clearly and see one's shortcomings and all that kind of stuff. But that's the springboard, or that's the launch pad to overcome that, or to transcend it, or at least to understand it.
Yeah, all I really know about Buddhism, I learned from Jason, and that
Then
was
you're in
one of
trouble.
the. Well, the thing is, the problem is his explanation was really non-contradictory. That reaches me. So, but he talked about suffering that way, and I like that you said that, because um, the suffering issue is so important to Buddhism. But when you're outside of it and you hear that word, you think, well, take an aspirin or something. What's the big deal? But
Right.
I like what you said. And that's what I learned from Jason too, is this suffering is really more this condition that hinders you from being more you and more who you're supposed to be. So I think you explained that perfectly. So thank you. You got questions, Jason, after that? Or
Did you?
because I'm going to ask a million. I'm done with my questions, but I
Go ahead.
want to know how you end up in Colorado. So you're Maryland to West Virginia. You're
I'm
going
just a
west the
rolling
whole way.
stone,
Yeah, this is great.
I'm just no, it's a long, boring story with many twists and turns, like most people maybe. But Colorado. I came through Colorado in the early '70s when I was in college, and even dropping out of college. And I went cross country several times with a friend or two, and so we stopped. Colorado is a great stopping point on the way to the Golden Land, which is California, the West Coast, and Of course, the home of Grateful Dead and everything, Haight-Ashbury and all that stuff, kind of pilgrimage. But and then I fell in love and had a significant partner, girlfriend in West Virginia. We decided well, it was time to make something of our life and my life. So we came to Colorado, and I went to school in Colorado for a while. So long story short, then I ended up going later back to the West Coast, where I became a chiropractor, all that kind of stuff, and then came back to Colorado many, many years ago. So I thought I'd spend my whole life in Oregon or in the West Coast, but it wasn't meant to be. I've ended up spending most of my life in Colorado in these mountains.
So how's being a chiropractor? Oh, sure. How is being a chiropractor mesh with being a Buddhist?
Well, the mesh is fine. I've finished that chapter of my life. Excuse me. I don't practice chiropractic anymore, but the whole thing of natural health, natural lifestyle, not wanting to rely on medications. Maybe I should be taking one now. So sorry. My passion became nutrition. I became a clinical nutritionist. That was the way I used chiropractic mostly as a way to, I really studied physiology and metabolism, cell biology, all that kind of stuff, and got really heavily into the clinical aspect of nutrition to a large degree.
So then how did this lead to this movie you're talking about?
I just, interesting story, I guess. I was sitting in my cabin one day. I was land sitting, this beautiful remote place in Colorado in the mountains. And I don't hear voices. I'm not a kind of, I could say like a new age woojie person. But for the first and only time in my life, a voice spoke to me, and it said, you have to write a movie, a screenplay about the life of Rachel Carson. For those of you that don't know, Rachel Carson was in 1962, wrote a very important book called Silent Spring, which talked about the dangers of pesticides and human impact on the environment. It led to many, many things. But it just blew me away because I don't hear voices. And it was like, what? And yes, I had read Silent Spring when I was 15 years old or something. Hadn't thought about her for decades. Anyway, that led me on a journey, and I ended up, long story short, researching her life and so on. That led me to thinking about other important people from kind of previous generation or two that, as they say, we stand on the shoulders of giants, meaning everything we do, we've kind of had other people that were pioneers before us. And so from there, I started thinking about a woman named Adele Davis, who the hippies, and before her in the 40s and 50s, even before there were hippies, read her books on nutrition. She was a very important nutritionist. And somehow one thing led to another, and I ended up doing this crazy deep dive into all these interesting people that I call eccentrics, fanatics, and visionaries. That's my sort of alphabetical progression. Eccentrics, fanatics, and visionaries. All these people that were real pioneers that we don't know about, nobody's heard of, or we've forgotten about. And I just found it fascinating, and it kind of unlocked this door, and I just started getting all these books from Amazon and so on. All these books that were written in the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, really interesting stuff. People that were way ahead of their time when America was always moving towards corporate food production and synthetic chemical-based agriculture and all this stuff. But there were always these voices in the wilderness. And I just got fascinated in that. And then I thought, there's a book in this. And I had so much information and material and this enormous, ever-expanding library. So I thought, I'm going to write this sort of 500-page, intense book. And then I thought, no, nobody's going to read that. And I decided, it'll be a coffee table book. something people can have out with all these great photographs and images and stuff. And then I came to my senses and I realized, that's not going to work either. But what people are interested in is movies and documentaries, and, we're visual people. So I've been working on that ever since. And that was, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. And
Wow.
Now I'm actually getting close. I've got somebody, I'm not a tech person at all. So after all these years, and my library, my nutrition history library, has been in boxes in a storage unit. So I've got them all out now. I've got a young, kind of savvy computer geeky guy who's great at website building. So we're now creating this website mainly as a way to have something to show with credibility how much is here, how much material we have, that then I can hopefully pitch to somebody at Netflix or the History Channel or whatever, and see if we can find somebody that's interested. I'm not a filmmaker. I don't intend to make a movie or documentary, but there's people out there that do that kind of thing. And I'd love to find some people or somebody who's passionate about natural health, natural foods. It's all about the environment because of organic agriculture, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of my current passion, aside from Buddhism, my secular, worldly kind of project.
Well, it's a good time for all of that. And hopefully we'll clip that section and send it out, and people will come talk to you about it. So I have to ask you this question because I think our viewers right now are trying to calculate in their head how old you are. And if I don't ask you how old you are, because you don't look old enough to be in college in your early 70s.
Yeah.
So how old are you?
I'm 71 now.
So can you give us your secret on how to look so young?
Nature and nurture, as the saying goes. If that's lost on people, nature means like genetics and all that kind of stuff. Nurture is like epigenetics, what we do with our genetic inheritance. So basically, I mainly avoid alcohol and fried foods. I would say is the dominant sort of things, and of course limit the bad stuff. Those are the two worst things. Especially hard liquor and hard alcohol and all that stuff's full of people don't even know that's full of stuff called urethanes, like polyurethane. It's hepatotoxic, extremely toxic on the liver and the whole body. So, I've tried to eat healthy and what I call nutrient dense eating, and organic as much as possible, and vegetarian/vegan. Just to reduce the overall toxic burden on the body, right? And meditation, I'm sure, helps a lot. Dancing to the Grateful Dead has been good at keeping one youthful. So there's a whole variety of things. Staying in nature, and all that kind of common sense stuff. Live a good life, and hopefully we stay fairly young. It's catching up to me. 71 is a shocking number, and I'm sort of in denial about it. It's hard to accept that. Many ways.
You look great. You look great for 71, for sure.
You see what we have in common, both of us. So that when I first met him, it was like we're both like diehard Buddhist fanatics, but then we're also passionate about food and health. So it was like, where did you come from? And it was like so interesting how we did meet, because he took a job in Florida and met a friend who I happened to be cooking for and living at her house, living in on the property. It was a big property, and we met, and we're like the whole dinner we're talking about like the Buddhist stuff, like, oh, do you like, which philosophy is your favorite? It was who's your favorite Buddhist philosopher? But let's tell us a little bit about how you got into Buddhism.
First of all, I just got to say, Jason's actually my younger brother.
I'm going to say it's borderline, or your son. He's your son.
He's copying my shirt. He's wearing a black T-shirt.
The hair, he just needs the glasses, but yeah.
No, we're not related. That's as a joke, of course. So, I'm sorry. So you were asking.
How'd you get involved in Buddhism? How did you get involved?
Or how did it find you?
Yeah, I looked into all kinds of world religions, and that's everything. The Bhagavad Gita and Hinduism to some extent, and I looked into sort of Christianity from different angles, particularly the mystics and stuff was interesting to me, and a variety of other things, just whatever I could get my hands on, basically. And nothing really clicked, although I really loved. So I had mentioned Henry David Thoreau. My other big influence was discovering Lao Tzu, which is the Tao Te Ching, the way of life. So very ancient Chinese, very slender book, but common sense, wisdom based around nature and sort of being in the kind of same, like taking the lessons from nature about things. Very simple. I'm not really doing it justice, but so I kept looking, and nothing really connected. Not strong enough. I took a class in TM, Transcendental Meditation, when I was in college, and I liked it, but there was no context to it. It was just reciting some sort of meaningless sound, and it was effective in as far as it went, but it didn't go nearly far enough. And then I discovered Zen Buddhism, and I was like, okay, getting warmer now, getting closer, following the breadcrumbs. And I liked it, but I still recognized it wasn't my real connection, not fully. And, there's always an element of serendipity in these things. So I was living in West Virginia with my cousins, and my cousin's husband had been a kind of an academic, and he had a great library, and he had some early Tibetan Buddhist books, Evans Wentz, Jason. And I read those, and I was like, okay, now it's really starting to hit home. And
did he suggest that to you, or did you
no,
go through
not at all.
everything?
Not at all. All on my
Okay.
100% myself.
Wow.
He just had the books, and among thousands of books, and I just found those. They found me, as Jason said. And I mean, there's different ways I can answer this, actually. I'm trying to keep it fairly simple. And then I found a little more contemporary stuff, like a famous Lama called Trungpa Rinpoche, who was basically in Boulder at that time. He was one of the very early Lamas to come to Boulder. So, long story short, I met this woman. She was reading the same books I was, The Life of Milarepa and Trungpa's books. And we became a couple and decided jointly, let's move to Colorado, and you can go to, meaning me, she wasn't going to do it, but I was going to go to Naropa Institute, which was a university he founded, based on Buddhist principles and so on. And then they had a Buddhist curriculum. So I went there, and it wasn't my connection either, not him particularly, and his community. I did not click with that. But I still knew I was a Buddhist, and I knew I was a Tibetan Buddhist. And I used to say to people, well, when I found Buddhism, it was like going to Vegas and you hit the slot machine and it just lines up cherry, cherry, cherry. You hit the jackpot. Everything is in alignment, and that's it. And that's kind of what it was. I just knew that's what it was. But I also knew not to settle for less than what I was really striving for. So we left Colorado. I moved to Oregon, Portland, to go to chiropractic school. And I immediately found a Dharma center there. That was my home. And that's been that took me from there. That was in 1980. So hard to believe that's 45 years already. But that's when I really solidly got on the path, took refuge in a formal way, met my teacher, and actually a couple of my two main teachers, both. And that led to the 3-year retreat, and on and on and on. So that's it's actually the short answer.
Right. It sounds like one of the themes of your life is just never settling for something less than it.
That's it. That's very true. I don't think we should settle. You know,
Yeah, well, we shouldn't, but I mean, you have lived that. It really sounds like from everything you've lived
I
that
feel very
and
grateful.
are still living it.
Yeah, well, I think so. Why stop? I'm not to the goal line yet, so I got to keep going.
Yeah.
I used to say, yeah, I'm very fortunate. I used to say that Tibetan Buddhism is the Grateful Dead of religion, and the Grateful Dead is the Tibetan Buddhism of music. So
The bumper sticker. That should be a bumper sticker right there.
that would go way over probably everybody's head. But so, but yes, don't, why settle? Why settle? We deserve everything. The universe is abundantly loving and beautiful and perfect, and we're part of that. So I'm doing my best. I'm trying to live up to that to some extent, despite falling short every day of my life.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, great. You're a great storyteller. Can you go into a little, right up to that point, you met your teacher. Can you share with John a little bit about Kalu Rinpoche and the 16th Karmapa? I think the two biggest influences on your life. Like, yeah, these are like extraordinary beings. So, I don't know.
Well, sure. I mean, Jason, you know who they were. You've seen pictures and so on. But I can say a few words. But if you don't know who they were, you don't know who they were. If you never met them or saw their picture, it's just my impressions. But no, I had met many teachers and other lamas, and the two that Jason just referenced, creme de la creme, best of the best, highest of the high. I mean, I've actually had like 5 different personal direct encounters with the Dalai Lama. And yet these two that Jason referenced, above everybody, including His Holiness Dalai Lama, in terms of spiritual brilliance, or I mean, there are no words. I can't even begin to even talk about it really, because I can't do justice. Kalu Rinpoche, the first teacher or lama that Jason mentioned, he was a meditation master of the highest degree. He was fully accomplished, and again, very enlightened and on every level. And but those are just empty words. They don't mean anything to anybody, Essentially, it means these are beings, when you see them, they're as close to what you could conceive of as being a, quote, perfect human being. Unhurried, graceful, always appropriate, fully present, loving, no pride, no arrogance, no ego. They have no point to prove. They're just here, and basically here to be, you could almost say, a conduit of light. That's not a particularly Buddhist metaphor, but that kind of thing. They're just loving and here to help others wake up. The 16th Karmapa, I don't even want to say anything, because he is pretty much, you could almost say, not human. He's so majestic and powerful, and there's no way to describe somebody like him, because he's unlike anybody that you could even conceive of. And it was not putting on a show or making it up, or some kind of mass hypnosis or something. This is just beyond inspiring, but showing like what the ultimate state of a human being, what the potential could be. So that was my inspiration. That's when I saw that, it was like, whoa, okay.
So where did you encounter both of them?
Both in the West Coast in Oregon. Actually, the Karmapa I saw and had a one-on-one encounter briefly in California, the San Francisco Bay Area. This was 1980. Excuse me. Then Kalu Rinpoche, he passed away the next year, the 16th Karmapa. And then Kalu Rinpoche, who is this, again, great yogi, meditation master, universally respected and by all schools of Tibetan Buddhism, all lamas, everybody who, had that respect and for him. And the center I was connected with in Portland, Oregon, was basically founded by him. So he came through the early 1980s. So I was going to chiropractic school, but what I was really doing was practicing and learning, not under him directly, because he came a couple times a year, briefly give some teachings and things. But we had a resident lama that had been raised in his monastery.